More than 8 million Americans own a timeshare. A huge number of them, if you search resale sites right now, are listed for exactly $1. Not $1 per night, $1 total for the entire ownership, maintenance fees, and all. And most of those listings still don't find a single buyer, sometimes sitting untouched for years. By the end of this video, you'll understand why getting rid of a timeshare can be harder than buying a house, and why trying to escape one has pulled ordinary Americans into contact with people connected to actual drug cartels. It starts with a pitch designed to work on you before you've even had coffee. Most timeshare sales happen at resorts, often kicked off by a free vacation, a free show ticket, or a modest cash gift, just for sitting through what's billed as a 90-minute presentation. Those 90 minutes routinely stretch to 3 or 4 hours, run by a trained salesperson whose entire job is building urgency. A discount that supposedly disappears the moment you leave the room, a countdown, a sense that everyone else in the room is about to say yes before you do. Say no, and it's common for a manager to appear with one more offer, sometimes repeated 2 or 3 times before you're actually allowed to leave, each version slightly cheaper than the last, engineered to make eventually saying yes feel like you won something. It's a sales environment built almost entirely around not giving you time to think, closed on the same emotional high of being on vacation in the first place, thousands of miles from your normal life and your normal skepticism. What you're buying rarely behaves like the investment it's pitched as, whatever the salesperson in the room implied. Timeshares come with maintenance fees that increase most years, sometimes sharply, regardless of whether you ever actually use your week. A studio-sized week that cost around $15,000 a decade ago can easily carry annual maintenance fees alone approaching $1,000 or more today, fees that tend to climb faster than inflation and that owners are contractually obligated to pay, whether or not they ever book a single night. Those fees exist for as long as you own the timeshare, which in many contracts means forever. Since a huge number of timeshare agreements have no natural end date and can even pass down to your children as a debt they never agreed to take on. Meanwhile, the resale value collapses almost immediately. Search resale platforms today, and you'll find tens of thousands of units listed for a single dollar, sitting there for months or years because there's essentially no genuine market demand for used timeshare weeks at any price. That desperation is exactly what a second layer of the industry feeds on, and the timing is rarely a coincidence. Once an owner starts searching online for how to sell or cancel their timeshare, or even just calls their own resort to ask about it, they often start getting unsolicited calls within weeks, sometimes claiming to be a licensed reseller, sometimes a real estate firm, occasionally even claiming to represent the original resort. Consumer advocates believe owner contact lists get quietly shared or sold the moment someone signals they're unhappy. The pitch is almost always the same. They already have a buyer lined up, ready to pay a surprisingly generous price, but the owner needs to wire money first, usually described as closing costs, taxes, or escrow fees, typically somewhere between $2,500 and $10,000. Once that money moves, the promised buyer never existed, and the company disappears, often reachable only through a phone number that's already been disconnected. Industry insiders have a specific term for one version of this: a Viking ship, a shell company created for the sole purpose of taking ownership off someone's hands just long enough to collect a fee before vanishing entirely, leaving the original owner still legally on the hook for a property they thought they'd escaped. Here's the part almost nobody expects. Some of the biggest operations behind these calls aren't small time con artists working out of a garage. According to reporting confirmed by American and Mexican officials, two of Mexico's most powerful criminal organizations, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel and the Sinaloa Cartel, have run timeshare fraud call centers targeting American owners of Mexican timeshares for more than a decade, staffed with English speaking cartel members working the phones like any other call center employee, complete with scripts, shift schedules, and sales quotas. The cartels reportedly obtain owner contact information through corrupt contacts inside timeshare resorts themselves, buying or trading lists of real customer names, phone numbers, and purchase histories the way any legitimate telemarketing operation might buy a sales lead list. In 2024, American and Mexican officials confirmed that as many as 8 workers at one of these cartel-run call centers were killed after trying to quit their jobs, treated less like employees free to walk away, and more like something closer to indentured labor, working under threat. And the scam frequently doesn't end after the first payment. Some victims report being contacted a second time, months later, by people posing as government officials or law enforcement, offering to help recover the money they'd already lost for one more fee. The scale of all of this is enormous, and it keeps growing every year rather than fading as awareness spreads. Federal regulators estimate Americans lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year to timeshare-related fraud, much of it drawn from retirement savings by owners in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, specifically targeted because they're seen as more trusting and more likely to have accessible savings sitting in an account rather than tied up in something harder to move quickly. The Federal Trade Commission has sued a long list of timeshare exit and resale companies over exactly this pattern, and states including Florida have passed laws specifically restricting how much these companies can charge upfront before doing any actual work, requiring escrow arrangements instead of straightforward cash grabs handed over on a promise. To be fair, the timeshare industry itself isn't uniformly a scam, and plenty of owners genuinely enjoy the vacations they've taken over the years, even if the math never quite worked out as an investment. Legitimate resale exists, usually through licensed real estate brokers who work on commission rather than demanding money upfront, and a growing number of major resort brands now offer their own deed back or surrender programs, letting owners simply hand the property back rather than pay someone else to supposedly find a buyer. The trade group representing timeshare developers has publicly acknowledged the exit scam problem and points owners toward these safer, direct options, arguing the reputational damage from scammers hurts legitimate resorts too. The advice from regulators and consumer advocates alike is almost identical every time. Go back to the original resort or developer first. Be suspicious of anyone who contacts you first, and never wire money to a stranger promising a buyer who conveniently can't be verified or reached again once the money's gone. A timeshare is sold as a lifetime of guaranteed vacations at a price that only ever seems to go up, while the thing itself becomes worth less and less to anyone but you. For a lot of owners, it quietly becomes the opposite of what was promised. A debt with no clear exit, sitting there long enough that eventually someone somewhere decides there's still money to be made off your desperation to be free of it. One more time for one more fee.